Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. Like I said before the break, we're switching gears a little bit, going to our personal rankings for this week at all different positions, starting off with the QB position. Now, a lot of you guys might be a little bit skeptical of the list I compiled. Remember, this was before, I watched the Week 3 games, and this was heavily based off the matchups from this week. So, you can feel free to bash me in the comments if you wish, because it's not, a list I would expect many people to have compiled going off what their eyes saw. But remember, this is just me looking ahead at the Week 4 matchups before the Week 3 ones and trying to figure out who potentially have a big game. So, without further ado, let's get into my list. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them. I'm always looking for some interesting advice here. But the first one I want to talk about is Baker Mayfield. And this one kind of aged poorly after that poor performance against Denver in a game they should have won. He really kind of regressed to the old Baker where he was tentative in the pocket, didn't have that same escapability, didn't really look very good going through his reads, and it was just a horrible performance all around. But against Philly, this is going to be a game where, Philly is going to try and stay in this game as long as possible, but I'm still a little bit skeptical of Nick Sirianni in this game, if anything. So they kind of had the advantage in terms of coaching, at the very least, the Bucs. But I still think, the Eagles' defense proved something to me, even though that game could have been more about the Saints being paper tigers than, actually the Eagles' defense really showing up and showing out. But this game, the reason why I still think Baker can have a good game is because I think that when the stage is big for Baker, I think he understands the facts that he has to live up to what his team expects of him. And through 3 games, getting rid of the Denver game, he has been one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the league in terms of utilizing his top 2 weapons. They're perhaps the best wide receiver room in the league, and Baker just has to stay comfortable. I think he, for some reason, felt a little bit rushed in this game, maybe because he wasn't expecting the Broncos' defense to generate pressure, to play covered so well. So if he just settles back in, gets back to what he's expected to do in this offense, trust his receivers, most importantly, then I still think he'll be set, even though the Philadelphia defense did look pretty impressive in that game against New Orleans. And another guy who kind of underperformed this week, C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, I was really shocked by his underperformance this week, but it was a Brian Flores coach defense, and Brian Flores is always excellent at knowing a quarterback's weakness and developing a game plan around it. He had a really impressive game. This Vikings defense, man, I can't wait to talk about them a little bit more as the season progresses, because they're just an opportunistic, feisty bunch, and they really made life difficult for C.J. Stroud, especially pressuring him for as long as they did. But it's not every week that you play a Brian Flores coach defense, and do I really have to mention the Jaguars right now? The less we talk about them, the better. In this matchup, you have to feel like C.J. Stroud had the upper hand. And it's kind of unfortunate that this game isn't as exciting because the Jaguars aren't that good, because it's a divisional game, and this could have been a big early season game for both of these teams. But right now, this just feels like it could be another blowout. C.J. Stroud will be relieved that he's not getting pressured so often, because he's kind of a different quarterback when he's pressured, if you think about it. He has thrown more interceptions against pressures and blitzes throughout his career when he's protected. So I just think that game was kind of an anomaly. He's going to get back to the C.J. Stroud we know against the Jaguars. So he's going to be a popular start bet for this upcoming week in fantasy, because it can't get worse in Minnesota, especially against a team who is perhaps one of, if not the worst in the league, in Jacksonville right now. And then let's get back to my 2 guys, in Gino and Jared here, in that big Monday night matchup where I feel like, both of these guys are kind of in the same kind of tier here where they're valuable waiver wire pickups, but they are more matchups oriented streaming type guys. But this game always brings out the best in them. I don't know what it is, but wherever they play, whether it's at Lumen or at Ford Field, both of these guys show up and show out. Yes, both of their offenses have more questions than answers right now, especially with the struggles the Seattle offensive line has had, and whether or not Sam Laporta will even play in this game. But when it's all said and done, I feel like this game will go down to the wire for both of these teams. And what with the fact that both of them, Geno more so than Jared right now, but I still think Jared will look more comfortable as the season progresses. We're comfortable with getting the ball out quickly to kind of mitigate for their offensive limitations. I think that both of them will have very good stats. So look out for them to kind of be two sneaky, nice plays for you in perhaps deeper leagues if you're looking at Geno, or in a 2QB league if you're looking at a guy like Goff, because both of these guys in this game really are the strength. This game is going to be more about both of their defenses, if anything, trying to prove that they're two of the better units in the NFC right now, because the Seattle defense, like I said, looks like one of the best in the league. Haven't really played anyone on the Lions side of the game. Aiden Hutchinson looking like an early candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. The secondary as well has looked pretty impressive, but the run defense has left a little bit to be desired still. But overall, both of these quarterbacks could be primed for big games, even though there are still questions surrounding their offenses. And it's going to be important that you view this game more as a fun shootout kind of game between two teams that feel like they can contend in the NFC than, a true litmus test for offenses that aren't where they want to be right now, if you catch my drift. But that's just my opinion, because I appreciate both of these guys and what they've done for their teams to start out the year. But at this current moment in time, I feel like this is just going to be a fun game where both of these teams won't sweat the result that much. I feel like if you're the Seahawks and you lose this game, you're still 3-1. You still have a pretty big advantage in the NFC West division, seeing as to how we don't know how the 49ers and Rams will look in the upcoming weeks. And if you're the Lions, well, if you lose to Seattle, yes, it's kind of a bad loss because Seattle is perhaps the most unknown 3-0 team right now. But if you lose to Seattle, it's like no sweat off your back. You're still going to be in the NFC North. You're still going to, feel like your offense will find its footing eventually. It's not, going to be the sky is falling in Detroit very much. I think that both of these teams, win or lose, will still be in contention in the NFC. But those two guys, look out for them in this game. The last guy I want to highlight, we talked about a little bit early in the show, recapping Monday Night Football, Joe Burrow. I think that this is also a game where Joe Burrow should, to some effect, have a good game. It's against the Panthers. Yes, the Panthers look impressive, but it was the Las Vegas Raiders they were playing against. So I feel as if Joe Burrow, week in, week out, no matter if the Bengals win or lose, no matter if the Bengals kind of peter out, he's going to be the mainstay in that offense. He's going to be the guy who's still performing at a high level. I think that this game is going to be either a get-right game for the Bengals or a game that really makes them look themselves in the mirror a little bit. I'm not expecting much out of the Panthers in this game because as much as I love Andy Dalton in this offense, he's not going to have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every given week. So it's kind of one of those games where you feel as if on one side, this is a get-right game, and Joe Burrow will want to prove that he's still got it. And on the other side of things, well, the Panthers, just coming off a big win for them, kind of rejuvenated, feeling like themselves again, feeling like they can actually build something this season. So that could potentially be a kind of trap game, but I'm not as worried about them as I was about the Raiders in terms of a quote-unquote trap game for this team. But when I look at all of these guys on this list, they're all guys who have had down performances, whether, we were expecting it from them or not. But they're all guys who I would trust in terms of picking and choosing matchups, as we get a comment here from Taco. 2-1 in the fantasy football season. He traded Godwin and Kyron Williams for Amon-Ra St. Brown and J.K. Dobbins. He has Hurts, Connor, and Dobbins now on his bench. St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Laporta, Jordan Mason. His bench is Pickens, Roma Dunze, Dowdle, Algier, etc. Also, trade Dobbins and Pickens for Marvin Harrison Jr. Throwing a lot at me here. This will most likely take us to break here. I do like this Godwin and Kyron Williams for St. Brown and Dobbins trade because, like I said, I really like Dobbins, especially now that they feel like they're going to be a more run or even more of a run-oriented team than they already are under Jim Harbaugh, especially not knowing the Justin Herbert situation and their 2 offensive tackles are down. They're definitely going to be run-heavy. Amon-Ra's going to find his footing. I have Amon-Ra kind of been up and down all year, had some good performances, but I still believe in Amon-Ra St. Brown. I still believe in the all-pro that he is. And Godwin and Kyron. Kyron's value is going to be weird to monitor because he had that nice game against the Niners this past week. So he could be someone who you might regret losing, but I don't really like him still. I still need to see it over a larger sample size, and Godwin as well. Someone who I really have liked to start the season, but Tampa's going to be a weird team to monitor, and I don't know if he's going to get as many targets down the stretch as a guy like Mike Evans. And the Dobbins Pickens for MHJ trade, I actually don't like this trade as much, to be honest with you, funnily enough, just because of the value Dobbins has as a running back, and MHJ in this Arizona offense really kind of being stop-start a little bit. We saw, yes, he had that big game 2 weeks ago against LA, but, this week against Detroit kind of fell a little bit flat, whereas Dobbins, I think that he's going to be the workhorse in this thing. And Pickens as well, not for nothing. I think that, Pittsburgh's not a team that's going to want to rely on their passing as much, but still, they're a team that when they do hit the pass, George Pickens has the opportunity to have some explosive plays. But I will say the bench is a little bit skeptical. You might want to add depth through the waiver wire to this bench because Dowdle and Algier, I like Algier, but Dowdle is not necessarily looking like the best bench back. And Roma Dunze is definitely not looking to be someone who has had a good start to the season or will continue to progress because the Bears are an unknown offensive entity right now. But I do like this team. I do like the first trade. The second trade, though, might have to wait it out a little bit. But thank you for this, Taco. Good luck to you in your fantasy exploits. I have a similar record to yours, so I appreciate that. But we do have to take a quick break. I'm going to see you on the other side. We continue with our rankings. At the running back position, which running backs do I expect to have big games? We'll be right back to finish the show with that segment right after this short break.